Councillor Ball, we've got about a minute to go, so I'll ask for it to go live, and I'll let you know when we're live so that you can start.
That's fine, Anna.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Ball, you can now start. We're now live on YouTube.
Thank you very much, Anna. Well, good afternoon, members, officers, and perhaps members of the public who may be listening in. Welcome to today's meeting of the CFA Corporate Governance Committee. The meeting, as you've heard, is being broadcast live on YouTube and will also be available for viewing after the meeting. The link is available on the CFA website. Some officers who are presenting reports this afternoon will be joining the meeting virtually, but we have others in the room today, including Callum Faint, our Chief Fire Officer, Lauren Haslam, our Monitoring Officer, and Colin Sharp, representing the Treasurer. So we are in good hands. Can all members and officers please have their microphones on mute until they are asked to speak or invited to speak, and officers signing in remotely show their video camera only when presenting reports, please. And check for me, please ensure that your mobile phones are on silent or mute. Done. Thank you. So if I move to the agenda proper, apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Mr. Joe Orson, and I would welcome Mr. Lovegrove, who is standing in for Joe today. So welcome, indeed welcome to this meeting. Agenda item is to receive, is to receive declarations by members of interest in respect of today's agenda. I am assuming that all members will declare an interest in agenda item 14, which is a review of the members' allowance scheme, as all are eligible to receive allowances. So with your permission, members, I'm going to record that as a en bloc. So I will do that as en bloc. Are there any further interest in respect of today's agenda, members, that you may wish to? I see no hands, so we move on. Thank you. So we now take agenda item 3 to advise of any other items which the chair has decided as urgent, and you'll be pleased to hear that there are no urgent items to take this afternoon. Agenda item 4 is the chairman's announcements, and a copy has already been circulated, and I will just touch briefly on those 3 items. I may bring in the chief on this in a moment, because we have what is called, the first one is the chief challenge, and as you will read, it's the last batch of whole-time recruits undertook their chief's challenge on the 30th of September, and that was delayed, of course, because of COVID. And I think the results there, if you look at them, the outcome is absolutely outstanding, and particularly if you're looking, you mustn't just look at the money, but if you look at all the other achievements, I think this is pretty special. And I think, therefore, I'll hand straight over the chief to add a little bit more to that and elaborate with his knowledge. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As we welcome all new batches of recruits into the service, I lay down a charity fundraising challenge for them to complete. This cohort took that challenge and ran with it, literally and figuratively, really. A phenomenal effort from all of the recruits. Paul Weston and I joined them on the day. They were physically tortured by it, I think it's fair to say. But actually, the rewards for that are incredibly impressive. They've raised a phenomenal amount. One individual seeking almost corporate sponsorship, raising £50,000 from that this year, with a follow-on commitment for the next 2 years as well. So that's £150,000 just by that individual's efforts. Phenomenal achievement. So very proud of what they achieved on the day. They did it with smiles on their faces, and they've raised a phenomenal amount of money for the firefighters charity, which helps support injured and recovering firefighters get back to work quicker. So it's kind of a really, really good and noble cause, and they've absolutely blown the socks off with this one. Thank you.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think with your permission, members, I would suggest that we record our grateful congratulations in the minutes of today's meeting. The next section within the announcements was the whole time recruitment campaign. And as you will see, it says the latest whole time recruitment campaign is well underway. And there were again over 500 completed applications. I think again, you may just wish to add a few more words to that, Chief.
Again, thank you, Chair. Recruitment campaigns, particularly for whole time, are big, unwieldy beasts, and that they take a lot of effort and work to get through. This campaign's no different. We've seen an upturn in applicants, which is really encouraging. I'm afraid I don't have the full breakdowns yet to give you, as the process is still ongoing, but I plan to bring that back to another meeting in the near future. But obviously, as we go forward, we're looking forward to welcoming yet more recruits into the service to continue to protect our communities in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, again, it's another good news story. And thirdly, on the equality, diversity and inclusion, as you will see, a number of positive events have been held over recent weeks. The internal work undertaken has been nominated for a Nation-Free Fire Services Award, and will now focus on raising awareness. I won't go through the whole amount, but there was one special thing which was attended on our behalf by Councillor Betty Newton. And I think, Betty, it's only fair that I ask you to give members a little briefing on that particular very special occasion.
It was indeed, and it was a Diwali celebration, and we had what was called Chai and Chat event, and it was very good. It was run by the Equality Officer Nita Patel, and she gave a really good explanation of what Diwali actually is, which is a festival of light and a symbol of victory of good over evil, knowledge over ignorance. It's just so much I didn't know or understand about that particular festival. So this year it was held on the 4th of November. And as I said, our Equalities Officer arranged a celebratory event. An invitation went out to all CFA members, but sadly I was the only one that turned up. But there was a huge attendance from firefighters, including women firefighters. I never often got the chance to speak to women, and that was I find that very useful. It was so useful to see so much support for an officer from other officers, and that really meant a lot to me. So it explored the history of Diwali, and I understood that Leicester holds the biggest Diwali celebration outside of India, and that was something I didn't know either. The slides were shown, which really gave us an insight into Hindu culture, the story of Diwali, and why and how the festival is celebrated. There was a good opportunity for people to ask questions of Namita, and there were special treats, special sweets that were handed out to those that attended. So I said I was really impressed with the number of officers, and how we would take that back, because it was extremely well attended, and it allowed me the opportunity to speak to people I'd never spoken to before. That was important. What was important to mention the two women firefighters, and I got an insight into issues that faced them as well. So for that alone, it was worth attending. I will maybe be worthwhile exploring that at a future meeting. And it's a good, as I said, to have that opportunity to celebrate. On a side note, I was out in Leicester East working last Saturday. I was doing Labour Party work, by the way, but I was out on the streets, and I noticed so many pavements were painted with chalk and colours. It was wonderful to see, to celebrate Diwali, all of these pavements outside people's homes. But it made me think, I know a bit about your celebration, so that for me meant a lot. So I think a big thank you should go to our qualities officer for putting in all that work and actually increasing my knowledge of what the Festival of Diwali, very like our Christmas in many ways, a celebration of life and moving forward. But I was very pleased to be able to do it on CFA behalf. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Betty. I mean, you are really our resident expert on quality, diversity and inclusion. In fact, you are our champion on this. So I think from the committee, special thanks to you for attending, and your enthusiasm for this particular topic really shines through. So thank you very exactly, and I do know that, and thank you very much for all that you do and have done. Thank you very much. So if I then move on to agenda item 5, we need to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of September 21. It's pages 5 to 12 of your packs, has already been circulated. Unfortunately, I was away attending the funeral of a friend at this meeting, as indeed I think Mr. Bray was away also. So I'm going to ask Councillor Newton if you will move the minutes, please.
Thanks.
And I'm looking for a seconder. Thank you very much, Mr. Bannister. I'm emphasising the names if we can because Anna is making notes of screen, as it were.
Formally second, Chairman. Thank you.
Seconded. Thank you very much. So that's agreed, and we can move on. So therefore, we move on to agenda item 6, which is our first report on this agenda on performance monitoring from April to September 2021. It's pages again 13 to 50 on your agenda pack. Looking at it, I think it's a very positive report. I think our chief has been able to look into acquire some of the national statistics, and there are some very good areas. And I will hand over straight to the chief to give that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is the regular performance update, and as members would have seen it before, it covers a wide area with a great deal of information in it. I'll generally be focusing on pages 17 to 19 of the bundle as the summary pages, but as you've already alluded to, again, I believe it to be a very positive report. So starting on page 17, members will see a continued drop in overall incidents, and specifically and significantly in all fire-related incidents. This is an interesting set of figures for us, as this is probably the first clear period that we were outside of any kind of lockdown measures. So we were slightly surprised to see the incidents continue to decline, but we very much welcome it. The downward trend continues with false alarms, which again is positive. However, it's not necessarily reflected in the special services, which continue to rise. This is mainly due to 2 incident types, and these are being assisting other agencies and affecting entry into premises. Generally speaking, these incidents relate to supporting our ambulance colleagues with these types of incidents. As I'm sure we're all aware, the pressures on the NHS and the ambulance service are well reported in the media at the moment, so we're only too willing to help our colleagues where we can. However, it does appear that these incident types continue to increase and are now more regularly relating to bariatric rescues or moving patients with a non-life-threatening reason. I've tasked my officers to go away and review these types of incidents in more depth so I can provide a bit more of a rounded update with clearer statistics for members in the future. But the common feeling among staff is that we're attending on behalf of the ambulance service when it isn't able to, or when the ambulance service has assessed that there to be low or no medical risk. To the point now where some callers are actually ringing us directly rather than going through the ambulance service. To give some context, in 1 month alone, we attended 34 of these types of incidents, of which the ambulance service only regarded 2 as a medical emergency. I'd also highlight that these types of incidents are commonly 2.5–3 hours in duration and are very soon likely to affect our operational availability if it continues to rise at the regular rate that it appears to at the moment. As I said earlier, I plan to bring a bit more of a detailed paper back to that, but just wanted you to know that work's ongoing and we're kind of reviewing the situation around bariatric rescues. The number of fatalities in non-fire incidents, which is contained in the KCI 2.4, has increased And again, this relates to assisting other services and other emergencies. And this is generally taking the form of affecting entry or breaking into property where there is cause for concern for an individual. Unfortunately, these types of incidents do tend to involve someone who's either in a very unwell state or has sadly passed away. So our crews are becoming more and more exposed to those kind of incidents that do take a toll on their mental health and well-being. I suppose the positive out of this for anything is the fact that we now have the TRIM service set up, trauma risk management. So as crews are exposed to these kind of traumatic incidents, we do have the welfare provisions in place. And I think the really encouraging thing here is that staff are actually utilising that service so that we're able to offer support, help them through that, and they're actually willing to accept the support and ask for it. So overall, I think it's a good news story, but equally the traumatic scenes that our crews go to and see shouldn't be underestimated. On page 18, KCI 3, we have made progress with our attendance times to life-threatening incidents, and the average response time is down to 10 minutes 13, but that is still below our target of the 10-minute standard, and we're very keen to continue to work to get to that 10-minute standard. We're focusing a lot of effort at the moment with our mobilising system provider, focusing specifically to reduce the call handling times. This is slower than is desired, and especially when you compare that nationally, our call handling times are a little bit longer, and we do believe that's due to the mobilising system. I've now personally taken on the chair of the group for the Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire and Leicestershire control rooms, and we are expecting a significant update to the system due actually on the 7th of December, and we'll eagerly watch those call handling times in anticipation that they should reduce and become more and more efficient. And we're also then exploring the options for the end of the contract with that service provider in 2024. Moving down to KCI 3.5 and 3.6, which regards operational availability. I think it's fair to say the summer was a challenging period for us for a number of reasons. COVID and the impacts of the pingdemic were still very much evident in that time. Obviously, restrictions were being restricted, so the number of people wanting to take annual leave after a prolonged period of time was high. And we did have a number of vacancies within the establishment, and that did result in some drop in operational availability over the summer. But a lot of hard work from the assistant chief officers and their teams has now seen that the availability is back to the level where we would like it. And equally, on-call availability appears to be returning to the pre-COVID-19 levels. And whilst we're working incredibly hard to try and recruit and retain on-call firefighters, it continues to be a really challenging area for us, not only for Leicester and Rutland, but as a country. The on-call system is in need of some work to really try and get those levels back up. And then I want to talk about KCI 4 and 5 on page 19. And for me, I have to say this is where the real good news story is, and I'm really happy to be able to report it, actually. I've been speaking for some time about this report and how our productivity levels have increased, and we're now actually engaging with our communities far more in exactly the right ways. But instead of me just commenting on this set of figures, I now have the national stats that actually support that. And I do apologise for not being able to include them in the report, but they weren't released until after the submission date. So we'll look to get them involved somewhere. And I think it's fair to say our previous performance nationally was below the desired level when we were languishing near the bottom 10 of 45 fire and rescue services across the country. But now, after these figures and the continued hard work, I'm so proud to be able to say that for the last full year, so 2020 to 21, we are now the 10th best performing fire and rescue service in the country when it comes to delivering home fire safety checks. And I say that 10th doesn't sound great, does it really? But this is reporting on the number of home fire safety checks we've delivered as a service, and it's compared with the number that every other service has delivered. It doesn't take into account the size of the service, doesn't take into account the number of resources they have available. So actually 10th is outstanding for us as a fire and rescue service, only being beaten by the likes of London, Greater Manchester, Merseyside, Kent, Essex, all very big fire and rescue services with incredibly big budgets and incredibly big, large amount of resources to be able to deliver it. So when you look at the 10th place, I'm absolutely blown away by the work that the service has done. And I'm proud to be heading that up at the moment. It's absolutely phenomenal. but it's not just one figure. And I need to stress that when you look at the fire protection audits that are going out into businesses and auditing the premises against the fire safety order, we're actually the 13th best fire and rescue service in that area. And again, only beaten by those larger metropolitan services with incredible amount of resources available. And I also want to say, this isn't a one-year wonder. I've been scrutinising the figures very hard and holding Paul to account on some of them. We are already over or likely to beat those figures in this current year as well. So it's a real focus on productivity, efficiency and effectiveness, and the service has risen to that challenge that I've raised to it. So I think I'm very appreciative of the work that's gone on from each and every member of our fire and rescue services. They all contribute to these figures, but I know I shared it with the members via email previously, but I'm really proud of what we've achieved and are continuing to achieve. And on that high note, I'll probably finish it there, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Yes, indeed, Chair, Chief. Members, are there any particular questions? I think that report is so good, it's difficult to come forward with questions. In fact, it's somewhat amiss of me as your chairman's introducing it as a positive report. In fact, it's a very positive report. In fact, even better, I think it's an extremely positive report, and the written words do not always portray the amount of hard work and expertise which has to go beyond achieving such as figures like this. Sorry, Mr. Bray.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. No, it's not a question. It's just congratulations from me to all involved. Such a fantastic.
Very much, and thank you very much. I think Mr. Bannister.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to echo the congratulations. I always find this report extremely interesting as the numbers are drilled down, and we get comparisons not just with previous months but with the 3-year average. And as the chief was speaking about how the fire service was being reflected nationally in some very good results, did occur to me as to whether or not there is a capability in these reports to do a comparison with similar size to fire and rescue services, so that we can see nationally how we are doing against a number of different key targets, as opposed to just how our own internal improvement is being monitored. Is that a possibility?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I do have the information available. It's not produced on a quarterly basis, so I wouldn't be able to bring it to every meeting, but certainly as the national statistics are released annually, I can give a comparator against our family groups of similar size, similar funded and similarly governed fire and rescue service, absolutely. But as a snapshot, we're pretty much number one in that table.
Yes, I think Mr. Bannister would agree to that. If I think we don't want to create more work for a very busy CFA, as it were. But yes, if we can have those figures on an annual basis, and I think we'll leave that for you to liaise with officers when we bring that to future committees. But thank you, Mr. Bannister, for that. Any other questions? No. Well, therefore, I'm delighted from the chair that I move that the performance of the Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service for the period April 21 to September 2021 be noted. May I have a second? Mr. Bray, Councillor Bray, thank you very much indeed. So therefore we move on to agenda item 7. It's Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Service Improvement Plan. Again, it's on pages 51 to 86 of your agenda. And we're making you work hard as usual this afternoon, Chief. The floor is yours. Thank you.
I'm happy to earn my money, Chairman. Again, following on from the good news story from the previous report, really, this report highlights the continued work against the HMI CRFS, which is Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services. We last received a full inspection back in 2018, and I think it's fair to say we were disappointed with how we portrayed ourselves in that report, and have been working hard ever since to to improve and really show our community and the inspectorate just what a good fire and rescue service we are. This report runs you through a number of the details of the action plan and the work that's ongoing. I don't propose to take members through every individual plan. I'm sure people will be happy to hear that. I think the important thing that I want to stress is that all areas of improvement are now underway or completed. So we've got no outstanding areas that we haven't got round to yet. I think generally speaking, the progress on this is incredibly positive, and actually I welcome the next inspection, as I think we will get a dramatically and significantly different report in a good way when they come in. The inspection dates have now been finalised and we are aware of them. Our full inspection will actually commence the week commencing the 9th of May, but obviously the data submissions and the work in preparation for that will begin in earnest after the Christmas and New Year period. I think generally speaking, the organisation is dramatically different and dramatically improved from where we were. The paper kind of takes you through a number of those items. I think it's fair to say there are some bigger issues in there around the people items of improving culture, improving trust and improving confidence. They're well underway, but obviously they take time to fully establish and fully deliver. But please be assured that officers and staff are fully engaged in this, and I welcome the next inspection, as I think it will be dramatically improved from where we were last time. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Members, Councillor Newson.
Thank you. I think to some extent you've covered what I was wanting to ask, which was really about the people issues, what sort of work done on those specific issues, but I think to some extent you have maybe something you can try on.
Absolutely. I think the people issue or people strand of the inspection was probably one where we were quite rightly weaker. I'm not critical of anyone or anything, because decisions were made for the right things and the right reasons at the right time building up to it. But we now need to invest more time and effort back into our staff to develop them, prepare them, make them be the best version that they can be for themselves. And we've got a number of work pieces on there around supervisory development pathways, coaching, mentoring, really kind of, there's a lot of things. I could probably spend a few hours just talking about that strand alone. But they do take time to filter through, and they do take time to get right and really improve the organisation. We're well on the way, but I wouldn't be honest with you now if I'd said we'd completed that activity. But they do take time, and staff are now starting to see the benefits of that and buying into it. Thank you.
No supplementary there. So quite happy. Members, any other questions? No. Okay. So as we say again, another very good report. So from the chair, I move that the progress made with the improvement plan be noted. I'm looking for a second. Mr. Balland, that's right. Excuse me. Thank you. So that's all dealt with. We will now move then to agenda item 8, which is the financial monitoring to the end of September 2021. It's on pages 87 to 92 of your agenda pack. And we have our financial expert here in the chamber to take this paper forward. So Colin, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, the purpose of this report is to present the financial monitoring to the end of September, as the Chair has said, and it's the second budget monitoring report for this current financial year, so following our normal cycle of reporting. I won't take too long introducing the report, but just to pick out some key points. As in paragraph 4, after allowing for the transfer of additional income to reserves that was approved at the September meeting, and the Chief Fire Officer's proposals to utilise £600,000 of underspends, which are on item 9 of the current agenda. The revenue position shows an overall underspend of £30,000, so more or less break even as things stand, allowing for those two significant items. Again, following on from previous reports, the underspends are mainly within employee costs as a result of vacancies throughout the year. And I think Callum has referred to some of those, for example, on the on-call firefighters in particular, staffing on lower points within the grades, and as I said, and also just some general vacancies throughout the service. The capital programme is reporting spend of just over £900,000 to date. Slippage of £1.9 million is identified, which again is explained in more detail in the report. So just to pick out some key other points in the report, the table on page 88 shows the forecast variances by type of expenditure. We have put quite a lot of work into the employees forecast, in particular for this report. So you'll see a forecast underspend of £677,000 on there. We are doing further work on the other lines. The finance team at last is now fully staffed. I say that with touching wood as I say it, but we do now have a fully staffed finance team. So we'll be in a much better position going forward to really start drilling down into some of the other areas as well. And as I said, obviously, as I've mentioned, Callum has the paper, and the next item on the agenda proposing to utilise most of that rather than having further to reserves. Section 9 just gives you a bit more detail of employees and other expenditure, etc. Moving on to page 90 in the capital programme, again, you have the normal table there of the capital programme approvals across the various categories, the forecast outturn and slippage. And you'll see that the main item of slippage, again, as was signalled before, is the new driver training pump and the aerial ladder platform, which are ordered, but we're not expecting to actually be delivered and paid for this financial year. I think that concludes my introduction, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Yes, well, thank you, Colin. Yes, as we say, I think it's a straightforward report. It's the second report, indeed, I think, of the year that we've held. And questions, Betty?
It's just about, it's not so much a question, it's more to say, some of us have been on the bar 30 times, so we know about health. I just wonder, are new members aware of this organisation, how it's operating and trading? It just might be worthwhile letting new members know what it is.
Okay. Yes, Forge Health is a trading arm of the Fire Authority. So it's a wholly owned company. So the Combined Fire Authority is the sole shareholder and appoints the directors, of which I'm one. And it exists to provide occupational health services. So it provides them to the Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service's own staff, and it also operates in the wider market, and in doing so hopes, as I say, to provide a useful service to the fire authorities and other organisations, but also to turn a surplus and give something back to Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service. I think over the last couple of years, it's external delivery of sort of traded services hasn't been as high as previously. Clearly, it was significantly affected by the COVID pandemic in the terms of people actually going for occupational health treatments, sort of etc. reduced, and also there was some turnover of staff. So we are not expecting it to return a dividend in the current financial year again to the CFA, but there is a lot of work been going on in the last few months to actually relook at its strategy. A new manager has been appointed, and it's certainly something both from the financial perspective of the CFA, but also as personally as a director of the company, that I actually want to make sure that we keep on top of that, and that we do over the course of the next few months get a clear direction and strategy for the company, so that we understand what we understand its future trading perspective, what it is likely or not likely to generate for the CFA. And whether Callum wants to add anything to that.
Yes. I think you've surmised it quite well, Colin, to be perfectly honest. I think it's important to kind of recognise, Forge Health aside, we would need to provide an occupational health service, and that would cost a reasonable amount of money to the authority. So the use of Forge Health actually reduces that cost to the fire and rescue service by the income it generates. So if we were to stop having Forge Health, we would still need to invest in the occupational health department. So it's a good way of kind of removing some costs for the CFA. So it's a very good initiative. I take Colin's points well on board around how COVID's impacted, and the generation of business isn't easy, actually. Otherwise, everyone would be doing it. But I think it's a useful asset to us. It provides a very good service to Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service. I am not a director of the company because that causes me some conflict of interest between the service and Forge Health. But actually, I think it's a very good initiative that saves the CFA money and is a good investment for the future.
Yes, thank you for that. I mean, that area is really worth noting, actually. Are there other questions? Councillor Bannister, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Colin, for the report. Some local authorities are beginning to report on some surprising underspends in respect of the mileage claims and transport claims. Perhaps not so surprising when you consider lockdown has meant that a lot of people are now not travelling to meetings and making claims. I think the surprising figure is just how much is being saved as a result. And I'm just wondering if that line is being considered in the table that is set out at paragraph 8 here, or whether that's a separate entity, and whether or not you can make any comment about what sort of figure that might entail in terms of an underspend for the authority.
Straight to Colin.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Bannister. Certainly, that is again the experience. There was an underspend on mileage. I think last year, we reported that in the outturn report, so I've got it in front of me. And I was certainly expected to be an underspend again the current year. There certainly is thus far. Yes, that would be picked up within the, within the supplies and services line. As I said, now that we have recently gained a fully staffed finance team, we are starting to drill down into the real detail of some of these lines. We know, for example, that we will overspend on other areas. So energy costs, for example, we expect to spend more on energy costs we did last year. I would expect us to again this year, given historical budgets and the way utilities are going. So for the moment, we haven't tried to get into the overall relatively small amounts of money in this report. But hopefully, in the next report that you receive, we will be able to drop into more detail in those lines, and certainly savings on mileage. I would expect to be one of them.
Thank you very much.
Good. Okay, so there's no other questions. Betty made reference to the fact that the two of us have been on the fire authority for a long time. I would hasten to add the horse-drawn era had long gone when we drawn, but we've certainly both enjoyed our terms of office within this committee. So therefore, from the chair, I will move that the revenue budget and capital programme position as at the end of September 2021 be noted. And for the second part, B, that it be noted that proposals for the CFO to fund priority development and improvement initiatives from the year underspend are presented elsewhere, which they are later on the agenda. I will propose that. Councillor Fonseca, would you like to second this particular one this afternoon?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Fonseca. So all dealt with. Therefore, we move on to agenda item 9, usage of in-year underspend. Again, it's on pages 93 to 100 of your agenda pack, and the chief will present this particular paper. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. And it kind of follows on quite nicely from Colin's previous report. And I'd really like to re-emphasise the point that Colin's made of it's taken us about 2 years to get a fully staffed finance team. And it's been incredibly challenging for both Colin and Manjura, our finance assistant. But this paper actually demonstrates the success that they've already been bringing around without a fully staffed team. So I really look forward to the work that can be achieved now they've got the team. So Colin and Manjura have kind of identified, as we've gone through the year, the potential underspend for the CFA. And instead of transferring it into reserves, which take a relatively healthy position at the moment, I would much rather release the money back into the service to bring about some real business improvements and tangible outcomes for the CFA and also our staff within the organisation. The paper kind of runs you through that, and probably worth focusing on the table on page 96 and 97, which breaks down the exact areas and the likely spend. I won't go in detail through them, but I will kind of talk around the headlines of that. To purchase a number of mobile devices, which will be iPads, means that our workforce can be both productive and engaging when they're out and about in the community. It means they can technically kind of access all the office functionality, as well as the training database and all the forms to work with the community, really kind of improving our productivity and efficiency whilst we're out of the station area, but also meaning that they can engage with systems and communities in a better way. We've kind of already touched on the impact on staff of health and wellbeing of being exposed to a number of traumatic incidents. I'm keen to bring about a health and wellbeing lead into the organisation for a fixed period of time to really reinforce our health and wellbeing structures, to look after our staff and make sure we can keep them as fit and as well as we possibly can do to keep them in the workplace for longer. I'll skip over the variable response vehicle, but take that at the end, Chair, if that's okay. A small amount of money to resource and to provide assets ready for the inspectorate in May. A significant sum there around setting up an apprenticeship provider within the service. This one really is an exciting opportunity for us to invest now to save later. By becoming an accredited body to deliver our own apprenticeships, we can draw down on significant funding from the apprenticeship levy, start delivering our own internal whole-time training and delivering apprenticeships across the organisation, and really saving us as an organisation hundreds of thousands of pounds a year potentially on whole-time training alone. So a really, really worthwhile activity to set us up as an apprenticeship provider. The next one underneath it is around staff recognition. I'm really, really keen to recognise the hard work and dedication of our staff and what they achieve. So we're really keen to bring back into effect an awards and recognition ceremony. This isn't about paying staff for their achievements. It's about the recognition events that go to it. Need to be very clear and very straight down the line with this one. This is not about payments to staff. Following on from that, the kind of other two pieces at the bottom there really come out of the staff engagement survey, where our staff are proud to work for Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service. They absolutely love the badge returning to our uniform, but feel slightly let down for formal occasions where our provision of undress or formal type uniforms is a little bit substandard, and they really want to represent the service at those areas. So again, bringing back that sense of pride and positivity in our workforce is an important aspect for me. And equally, whilst we continue to work hard on getting our new learning and development site, in the meantime, we would like to invest a bit of money with other fire and rescue services to expose our staff to regular and challenging hot carbonaceous fire burns. Just going back to the variable response vehicle, I'm sorry, the timing hasn't quite worked out for this. The members will be on the 2nd of December for the full CFA. We'll be able to look at tactical response vehicles, type B fire engines, which is the normal fire engine, and also be able to see a variable response vehicle. But we could only get that once, and we wanted the whole CFA to be able to see it. But the variable response vehicle is almost the evolution of tactical response vehicles. We've had tactical response vehicles in the service now for coming up to 7 or 8 years. They've provided a very good capability for us and enabled us to respond to incidents effectively. But as with all things, technology's now come on, and there are newer vehicles and newer products out there. We do need to purchase another one at very least, simply because of a Dear Chief Officer letter requirement around number of spare vehicles. So rather than just buy a replacement for what we've currently got, we would like to purchase 2 of these types of vehicles to trial them, to make sure they're fit for purpose, and naturally evolve our operational provision for the community. But members will be able to see that on the 2nd of December. So generally speaking, I hope people will recognise that this is about reinvesting existing money. This isn't extra money we're asking for, and it should bring about some very, very positive business improvements and business effects for our staff and the service. So I won't talk anymore, Chair, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Chair. Not a question, more of a comment for the Chief. I think when you have a big sum of money to spend, it's always tempting to allocate it for a big shiny project. And so I'd like to applaud you for deciding to spend it on a balanced range of initiatives, especially as a lot of those coming from staff feedback as well. So we've got the internal initiatives on, wellbeing lead, iPads for training, and also, this new vehicle, life training. And so I think there's some really good ideas in there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We're working very hard to involve the staff in everything we do. Now, we don't always get that right, but it's important. They're our service. I'm not the service, they're our service. And I think it's important to recognise what they want and what they need to do their job for our community. They need the right tools, and this is hopefully a step towards that.
Thank you. I mean, yes, I think just along that vein, I mean, fully support this from here, the staff recognition evening. And I think when you're talking about reinvestment, Chief, it really highlights the importance and how good we are actually on the control of funds, revenue and cash. I mean, that's an essential part of any business, and we're doing rather well. Thank you. Oh, Betty, thank you. I'm sorry, I missed you.
That's okay. I'm not saying anything on staff recognition, which I was going to because it's been covered, but I would like to say I really commend the amount that you've in for apprenticeship funding training, because at this particular time, because it's having an impact on people who are education. Some of them are struggling to get young people to attain. So I really think that apprenticeship funding.
Good. Any other questions? Okay. So therefore, members, I will move from the chair that the improved working, which is identified that in-year underspends of 600,000 can be released. That be noted. The Chief Fire Rescue Officer's decision regarding the usage of the identified underspend as specified in Table 1 to bring about positive business improvements with the resulting budget adjustments being within the approved scheme environment be supported, and C, that the addition of the £190,000 is added to the capital programme for the purchase of the variable response vehicle to be approved. I will move that from the chair. With your compliments, Mr. Hicks, can I ask you to second that? Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Hicks. Thank you. So therefore, we'll move on to agenda item 10. It's the Service Development Programme and our Plan 2024 update. Again, it's on pages 101 to 112 of your agenda pack, and I'm delighted to welcome and ask Paul Weston to take this particular paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I'd like to go through the Service Development Programme, starting off with the projects. Members would have had the paper, however, I would like to highlight a number of areas. On page 102 on the appliance replacement project, we now have 8 brand new fire appliances that were agreed through the capital programme. They are now in the service, they're operational. We're decommissioning the appliances that they're replacing, the older appliances. Once they're decommissioned, they will be sold off. I'd also like to go on to page 103 around the learning management system, the Oracle project. Oracle has been introduced into the service, but it would be remiss of me if I said it was introduced smoothly. We've had a number of teething problems with the project, to the point that we're now going to invest some service time and some service resource in ensuring that it's delivered to our staff in the best possible way, that they're fully engaged with it, they understand how it works. We've taken some learning from the actual implementation part of the project that we will make sure that's included in any future projects that we deal with that are on a similar vein. On the same page on the fleet replacement project, again, this is looking at the smaller vehicles. We're experiencing a number of delays caused by the pandemic. For example, the fire protection cars, they've been ordered. However, due to issues within Ford, they can't be delivered on time. However, I am hopeful that they will be with us within the next few weeks. If I now move on to the actual hour plan, so if we can move to page 105, around the aim, we want to achieve fewer incidents with lower impact. The Chief Fire Officer has already stolen the thunder on this one around the delivery of home fire safety checks and number of fire safety audits. But again, I would like to echo his sentiments. It is a fantastic achievement. Our staff have worked extremely hard and they continue to do so. So that's a really good news story. Also, if we look at the effective management and communications of our tall building risk profile, again, as members are aware from previous reports, following the Grenfell Tower incident, we were requested to look at our tall buildings. Originally, it came through that we had 115 buildings that qualified. This has expanded to 155. And again, our fire protection team have worked extremely hard, not only in identifying those premises, but also triaging them and reporting back to the National Fire Chiefs Council. And that's on target to achieve the deadline of December this year. I'd also like to go on to explaining on page 108. This is to continue to collaborate with our blue light partners and partner agencies to support the purpose of safer people, safer places. We're working extremely hard with our partners in not only identifying vulnerable people that we can assist in making sure that they're going to be safe and well within the home, not only from the effects of fire, but also with their well-being. We've also now expanded out into working with businesses in ensuring that the premises that people not only work in but also visit, whether it be shopping or through meetings, are safe and secure. I'd like to point out to members that we've held a number of business safety events at Fire Service headquarters. The last one that we did, we actually went into City Hall, and this was yesterday, and we successfully delivered fire protection advice to 115 different business owners. We're now expanding that across districts, which we hope to achieve by the end of the financial year. I'm quite happy to take any questions on that, Chair. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Paul. When you have such a good report as this, it's very hard for the chief not to steal your thunder. So I think we'll forgive him on this occasion. Members, are there any questions? As I say, it is a very good report. Okay, well, I think that actually speaks for itself. It is indeed a splendid report. So from the chair, the recommendation is that the Corporate Governance Committee is asked to note the proposals made since September 2021 in the delivery of projects within the Service Development Plan and the tasks that are included in our plan 2024. It's moved from the chair. Mr. Gotteray, can I ask you to second that? Indeed, taken. Thank you very much. So therefore, we will now move on to agenda item 11, and it's the progress against the internal audit plan 21-22. It's again pages 113 to 136 of your agenda pack. We have a slight change of theme here. We have Matt Davis, who's going to present this, our internal audit manager, online. Yes, he is online. And of course, welcome, very warm welcome. And of course, we have Neil Jones with us this afternoon. And Neil, you may wish to add a little afterwards, but the floor is yours, if not the air is exactly that. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you once again for the opportunity to present the progress against the plan. It was the plan that was agreed at the committee on the 10th of March. Moving straight on to paragraph 7 that explains the numbers. There were 12 areas on the plan that was approved by the committee, but we had to do a piece of work, follow-up work on some legacy high importance recommendations. More of that later in this report. And we had to complete a legacy piece of work that straddled 2 financial years. So we're looking at 14 distinct areas of work. So the facts and figures are that we have completed at least a draft stage 5 pieces of work, and we've got 9 that are work in progress still. Members of this committee will know that the plan is heavily weighted to the final quarter of the year for various reasons. So, to be honest, in concluding this part, looking at just progress against plan, I'm perfectly happy where we are at this time in our reporting cycle. Paragraph 13, I should point out there, does explain that from time to time we may need to look at environments, and we haven't started a piece of work in relation to emerging issues yet. And it may be that when I talk about the high importance recommendations, we may need to use some time from that area to actually follow up and complete that work. So that was just flagging it up, but more, we'll know more really in March time. So we'll be able to flag that up certainly in March as to the exact figures and whether we'd need to take any time from that allocation. Paragraph 14 covers the partial assurance recommendations. So just to recap for this committee, there were 2 high importance legacy recommendations, and then there were 2 more that came in. So we've got 4 high importance recommendations or partial assurance pieces of work that we need to look at. Paragraph 14 actually explains the current status of those. We were looking at contract procedure rules and following contract procedure rules. We've issued a draft report, but unfortunately at this stage we can't say it's been adequately addressed. We still need to do some more testing, and we still need to actually finalise that report. I can take more questions on that at the end, but that's just so we can't say that that's out of this committee's domain yet. And then we're looking at the legacy reconciliations and balances work. From our retesting, we were happy that one of the recommendations could be lifted. That was in respect of, been addressed. That was in respect of prompt and independent reconciliations being undertaken. So we were happy with that. But then we had 2 more recommendations in the 2021 recs and balances. And we are happy that one of those can be lifted in respect of unreconciled investment transactions. We think that's been promptly identified and corrected now, any imbalances, but we still need to be assured on the other recommendation that was in respect of on costs on the salaries control account reconciliation being promptly undertaken and balances investigated. I appreciate there's a lot of detail there, but just for the benefit of the committee, then just summarising, there were 4 recommendations that were in the committee's regime, and we're recommending from our testing that 2 can be addressed as being completed and took out the committee regime, but there are still 2 that we need to report back at the next committee, report back progress against in March. So in concluding, I would actually say that progress fee plan, we are there or thereabouts where we should be. I'm quite happy with that. I'm happy that there are valid reasons for the remaining areas of work in progress, and we've made the coverage I'd expect to date. We do need to close off the 2 legacy high importance recommendations though as soon as possible, and we'll report back progress against those to this committee in March, as I've said. Now we're moving on to paragraph 15 onwards, and Neil's going to take you through that before we both take any questions on the respective parts of the report.
Right, absolutely fine.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Matt. I'm going to start this rather bizarrely by asking Matt a question, if you don't mind. Just the legacy recommendations you just mentioned there, the partial, are all in key financial systems, and I picked up earlier on that the Treasurer and the Chief have said, obviously, there's a full staffing quota now in finance side. Are you more comfortable now that they're going to be closed off with that full staffing quota?
Yeah, one Neil is in respect of recs and balances in the finance part. The other one is in respect of the contract procedure rules being followed. Yes, in relation to the recs and balances side, we go in and test this piece of work annually anyway. We did a retest, and the balances had been identified, but they hadn't been corrected. We'll be going in, where are we? Somewhere between January and March and retesting. And at that stage, I'm fairly confident that they'll be been investigated and they'll be closed down and they'll be addressed. With regard to, it's a good question with regard to the procurement hires in the contract procedure rules. If I'm honest, it's not a quick fix. in as much as, without going into too much detail, we've got new and existing contracts that need to be put onto a single blue light database. That's going to take a while. Training delivered to procurement managers and administrators on revised procedures. Again, that is not a quick action. And identifying expenditure on low value items and making sure that the overall spend is either through framework contracts or processed, or a process is followed to ensure value for money is obtained and continues to be obtained, getting that assurance on those areas. So they, and I appreciate this is a bit of a long answer, but they are not quick fixes, but we've gone through pandemic delays, reprioritisation. We are in a position where there's been changes to assistant chief fire officers, and I believe there's another one in post from the 1st of December. So I would hope that I can either report that it's closed or that the officers will be able to explain any delays and just explain progress made at the next committee.
Thank you. I've just thought that level of detail was useful at the time. So, the final part of the report, Chair, and the rest of the committee is predominantly around. So you've heard the level of detail from Matt there, but it just brings the committee's attention to a couple of pieces of work that the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy are undertaking, both in respect of the role of the internal audit function and also the role of audit committees such as this corporate governance committee. So in terms of the work on the internal audit service itself, there was this a research project that CIPA are undertaking, and this included a completion of a survey on behalf of internal auditors and their clients. Very pleased to say the survey was supported by and completed by the chair of the committee, as well as myself. So as regards this particular piece of work, since this report was written, CIPFA has moved on quite quickly in arranging a series of groups really to explore some of the themes arising from the survey. So there's exploration of how risk mature are organisations, how good is the audit committee's oversight, whether internal audit has resourcing and skills in a wider capacity, and also are we using the right tools and techniques. And I know Matt and his team are bringing some of those out in the audits here. So on that particular area, CIPFA will report back early next year. And then the final part of the report really is CIPFA responded back to the government's proposals, which were over the summer, relating to implementing the recommendations by the Redmond Review, which have been reporting to the committee for, it seems like 2 years now. I think it probably is 2 years. So CIPFA is actually supporting the government's proposals, and it's all around strengthening the role of audit committees, and the detail is spelled out in paragraph 16. So again, since I wrote this report to committee, I've already attended a CIPFA webinar introducing how it plans to update its guidance to audit committees, talking about the structure, roles and responsibilities, perhaps the pros and cons of mandating independent members on committees, and then the status of audit committees and how they can improve their impact. So I just think it'll be interesting to see over the next few months before the committee next meets where that prominent body, CIPFA, is going in terms of those future government requirements. So we'll bring a report back in due course on that. So I've already asked Matt questions. If anybody else has got any further questions, we'll take them.
You're putting out a challenge. Yeah. Are there any other questions? So no, I think you've actually covered. Sorry, I have missed Mr. Valance. Okay. No. Mr.
Sorry, is there someone?
So we've got two, have we?
Well, I'll defer.
Carry on, Mr. Bannister. Sorry.
Thank you. I think it's absolutely right that this committee retains its concern and receives the reports with regard to those areas of work that have only received a partial assurance, and I'm grateful for the information that's in the report with regard to how we are progressing with regard to those matters. I note in the table at paragraph 14 on those two areas of work which have now been retested and subject to approval by this committee will be considered addressed. Does that automatically mean that the partial assurance is lifted. I was just looking in the report for something perhaps a little bit more explicit to confirm that the partial assurance given in relation to that particular audit name is lifted, or is it just going to be implicit with regard to the committee confirming that those works have now been retested and we are content with that? I just seek that clarification. Thank you.
Do you want me to take that, Matt?
Yeah, that's fine now. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, for the committee's wider perspective, when we do a full audit, so we'll start off with the full scope of an audit. When we raise a partial assurance, that's based on the whole of the wide testing, the audit itself. When we go back and retest just the one area, if it's failed in one area, it doesn't necessarily pick up the partial rating because we're just concentrating on that one area. We don't go back and concentrate on all the other areas which have effectively passed. So what may have happened, and I hope this hasn't, is that we concentrate on that lift the partial, but somewhere else it doesn't lift the partial, but it gets closed off in terms of bringing it to the committee.
Could I just seek further clarification? Will there come a point when the partial label on that assurance is lifted and that the committee will receive a report?
Yeah, the partial rating will stay historically, but we'll move on, and that audit is perhaps going to be done next year, and next year it may have a normal substantial rating or a full.
That's clear. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you have an understudy in waiting there with Mr. Bannister Neil, actually. So no, but thanks for those questions.
We are recruiting the chair.
Indeed. Okay.
What are the pay scales?
Okay. Are there any other questions then, members? Right. So therefore, the recommendation before us, members, is that the committee is asked to note the report and the fact that 3 audits are complete, one of which is prior year, and that there are 2 other legacy partial assurance ratings remaining, but there are no other partial assurance ratings in the current financial year to date. So I will move that from the floor, and I'm going to blame this exalted chairing position. Mr. Hills, could I ask you to second that? And apologies for getting your name wrong just previously. So apologies. So that's approved. And seconded. Thank you. So therefore, we will now move on. And thank you, Matt, and thank you, Neil. We'll now move on to agenda item 12. Which is the National Scheme for Auditor Appointments managed by the Public Sector Audits Appointment Limited. Again, it's pages 137 to 150 of your agenda pack. And back to you, Colin.
Okay, thank you, Chair. First of all, my apologies. This is a rather lengthy report. The reason for that is that the Local Government Association issued a template, and given time pressures and etc., I've used the template, but I am conscious it is quite a lengthy one. So I won't go through the report paragraph by paragraph. I'm sure you'll be pleased to know, but I will just give you an overview of some of the key points, and obviously happy to take any questions as usual. So as part of the Local Government Act 2014, the Combined Fire Authority is required to appoint an auditor to audit its accounts of each financial year, and that is currently Mazars on a 5-year contract, as I'm sure you'll be aware. And for doing this, there are 3 options. One, the CFA could appoint its own auditors. Secondly, it could act jointly with other authorities, be those fire authorities or other local authorities, to procure an auditor. And thirdly, it can opt to appoint through a national appointment scheme, which is the Public Sector Audit Appointments scheme. They are the nominated national audit procurer within by the government. So the current auditors, Mazars, were appointed through that national procurement scheme for a 5-year period. That is now coming towards its end, and therefore it is proposed in the report that the CFA uses the next PSAA appointing round to secure an auditor for the 2023-24 to 2027-28 accounts, that 5-year period. As the report shows you, it's proposed to undertake this option for a number of reasons. One is that the PSAA will ensure that auditors are properly registered to undertake local authority, combined fire authority, police audits. And there is currently a shortage of registered providers in the market. I think, as we may have previously discussed, it's not a particularly attractive field of work for the audit firms at the moment. We've seen that come through with increases in fees each year. We're seeing it come through with the widespread delays to local authority audits in the current audit round, etc. It will enable continued formal collaboration and joint working initiatives so that any one audit firm will be auditing more than one organisation. And for example, Mazars being probably the smaller firm on the list, they audit a number of fire authorities, and I would expect that sort of arrangement to continue. The procurement process through PSAA should be managed to ensure that both quality and price criteria are met. There has been some debate within the sector about the balance between price and quality. I forget the exact balance on the procurement that led to the current 5-year period, but I think it was somewhere around 50-50 price and quality. The PSA plans for this next round of procurement are 80% quality and 20% price. Personally, I thought that was taking it a bit too far towards the quality side, as did a number of the people, but certainly not everybody. PSA have considered that. They are still planning to go the 80% quality, 20% price. I think partly picking up on the concerns, as I said, that the audit firms don't feel there's really much money in this sector at the moment, and also that they really do want to make sure that the firms resource themselves up so that they can deliver audits in a timely and efficient fashion, which clearly has sort of ceased to be the case over the last couple of years across local authorities, fire and police. And as I said, the PSA have consulted quite widely, to be fair, on sort of that the procurement strategy to be taken, and they're fed back to the sector on sort of the results of that consultation and their discussions with the firms and how they're proposing to take it forward. PSA crucially ensure independence and will manage any conflict of interest and provide an ongoing contract and high performance management. I think it's also worth adding, again, as the report shows, that if the CFA were to choose to either just simply go out and procure its own auditor or to seek other authorities to join with, that is quite a complex process. We would still have to use the same list of audit firms because it has to be a registered firm. It cannot be a local firm, and there are various independence requirements in terms of the CFA panel that would approve that procurement and that auditor. So, to say, for all those reasons, it's the officer belief that whilst it's clearly demonstrated itself to be far from perfect over recent years, actually the best way forward now is to opt to join in the national scheme. We think that will support market sustainability, allow any further national changes in audit requirements, and to be honest, is the most straightforward approach for the CFA, because to go down its own route is a lot of work and wouldn't necessarily result in the appointment of an auditor at the end of the day. Legislation does state that this is a decision for the full CFA, as it is within local authorities. It's a decision for full council. And so the recommendation for this committee is that you recommend to the CFA to opt into the PSAA National Procurement Scheme. I'm happy to take any questions.
Members, a very straightforward and clear report, as I suspected. I think, and quite correctly, I don't think there are any questions. Or did I miss that? Councillor Newton, no, Betty, you were not. You were just nodding. You were nodding in approval of my words. Oh, okay, thank you for that. So therefore, members, the recommendation before us is that the committee is asked to recommend to the Combined Fire Authority that it accepts the invitation from the Public Sector Audits Appointment Limited to opt into the sector-led option for the appointment of external auditors to principal local government and police bodies for 5 financial years from the 1st of April 2023 until the 31st of March 2028. I will propose that from the chair. Mr. Valland, would you like to second that for me? Thank you. Thank you very much. That's excellent. There is, in fact, a challenge within this recommendation, because I'm hoping that someone on this panel on the 31st of March 2028 will say, I was there on the 24th of November when we approved that. So I might be looking to one or two of the younger members to take up that challenge. But there you are. Excuse me. So therefore, we move on to agenda item 13. It's the review and the revision of the constitution of the Combined Fire Authority, pages 151 to 156 of your agenda pack. And I'm delighted to say, who's been sitting very patiently and helping me on occasions, we have Lauren Haslam, who's going to take this paper forward. Lauren.
Thank you, Chair. A short paper, members, simply to bring to your attention minor changes to the Constitution which are recommended to you to be put forward for approval by the CFA in due course. Both relate to the CFO employment-related issues to address issues arising out of the terms and conditions for the CFA, one of which relates to a requirement that there be an annual appraisal, and the second that relates to an annual salary review. The mechanisms by which it's proposed that these two objects are achieved. Firstly, the annual appraisal should be undertaken by the chairman of the CFA on an annual basis, and that the salary review should be undertaken by a panel constituted by the CFA to form, in effect, an employment committee. The recommendations are paragraph 2 of the report, and this committee is simply asked to recommend that those changes be put forward to the CFA for approval in December. Thank you, Chairman.
Members, I think, read the papers, I think as our monitoring officer said, I think that's straightforward. Shall I go straight to accepting? I won't read it out again. Taking the words of the monitoring officer, I am very happy to propose that from the chair. Mr. Lovegrove, would you like to second that? And
happy to second, Chair.
Thank you very much. And we'll be able to prove that you've stood in very worthily. Mr. Orson, thank you very much. So that is therefore approved, members. Thank you. So we will then go to our final report. Is on the review of the member allowances scheme, report of the independent remuneration panel, 157 to 166 of your agenda pack. And back to you, Lauren. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Similarly, a short report, members. In September, you'll recall the CFA agreed to constitute an independent remuneration panel to review members' allowances. This is a non-statutory review, but is simply to reflect best practice to ensure that the allowances are reviewed at periodic intervals. The panel met at the beginning of October, and their report is attached to this report for members' information. Their recommendations are set out in the report at paragraph 2, and in essence it's recommended that the indexation arrangements continue up until 2023, when it's intended that there be a larger, more wide-ranging review looking at issues around allowances across the board. So in a sense, it's an interim position simply to hold the current position until that review is undertaken. But that's the recommendation from the panel as set out in the Chairman. Thank you.
Again, members, are there any questions? I think, again, that's straightforward. It's not my intention to go through the list or read out the recommendations, but I think I'm going to refer you to the papers before you. They are fairly lengthy. So it is proposed that we accept that from the chair. Can I look to you, Mrs. Newton? I think I've got everyone seconding in this meeting this afternoon, so I'm on the second way around. Can I take you as seconding that, please, Mrs. Newton? Thank you very much. That's done. So that's really good, and that sums that up. So therefore, we go to agenda item 15, urgent items. I think, as I mentioned at the outset of this meeting, we don't have any urgent items. So agenda item 16 is really to inform you of the date of the next meeting. And of course, this is going to be on the 9th of March. We've all had Christmas and New Year by then, so we will be on duty, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I'm sure. But what I think it's incumbent on me just to also remind you, of course, that we have what I would perhaps our last meeting of this year, which is the 2nd of December. It's the full CFA meeting. There has been a change of venue. I know you've had that very efficiently advised to you by Anna, but it is actually going to be here on the 2nd of December, and as we've already heard from the chief, I think in the pre-meet, as it were, or in our gathering, we're going to be able to look at the new vehicles, and that I think is something very interesting. So, and that I think, therefore, I will close this meeting at 3:18. Thank you very much all for your attendance and your participation. Thank you, members, and thank you, officers, and have a safe journey home. Thank you.